the absence of a strategic direction and a focus, which is basically what strategy is, it's all about focus. That means that you could be super efficient because your operations are working really, really well, but you could be doing the wrong things really well. So without a strategy, you might think, well, it's okay because operationally we are slick, we are efficient, we know what we're doing everything really, really high quality. We're doing everything to a really high quality. That's great, but maybe you're putting your efforts into doing the wrong things to a really high quality. Strategy is all about deciding what you are and are not going to be focusing on. Welcome to the Independent School Podcast. Thinking and acting strategically is the key to both securing the future of your school and helping to build a more equal and just world. My name's Juliette Corbett. I'm a consultant, speaker and facilitator specialising in helping independent schools. In this podcast, I translate tried and tested strategy and fundraising techniques into a language that works for schools. So if you're a senior leader in a private school and you want your daily work to feel less exhausting and more strategic, and if you want once more to feel the joy of making the world a better place through education, then you're in the right place. Welcome, and let's get started on this week's episode. Hello, welcome to this week's episode where we're going to be talking about what happens in a strategy void. I often work with schools where there's a slight ambivalence towards strategy, let's put it politely, where there's a slight sense that strategy is fine for business, but actually we're not a business, we're a school, and therefore there's a pushback, if you like, against the idea of having a strategic plan. This is happening less and less. There are more and more schools now realising that actually strategic plans are absolutely essential for schools. And not just that, but that strategic plan needs to be written and created in a way that involves lots of people and in a way that's actually going to be delivered on the ground rather than just being a strategic plan that sits on the shelf. But there's still a sense that there are many schools that I've seen, that I've spoken to people who are working within, where there is a strategy void. And sometimes this can even happen if there is a strategic plan, but the strategic plan sort of doesn't cover the things it needs to talk about or doesn't give enough focus around what's going to actually happen. So what we're going to talk about this week is what happens within a strategy void, and therefore why strategy is super important. Really quickly, before we dive into the detail, I want to make sure that you make the most of the time you invest listening to this podcast. And the best way to do that is to make sure you grab a copy of my free ebook, The Strategic Independent School Leader. It outlines how to answer the 6 essential questions that will clarify your school strategy and secure its future. In the world of business, strategy can be full of jargon, but it doesn't have to be that way. This is a jargon-free tool tailor-made to help private school leaders think and act more strategically. Download your free copy today at www.consultjuliette.co.uk/ebook. So first of all, when we're talking about what happens in a strategy void, let's just define what we're missing if we don't have a sense of strategic direction. Operations, so this is your action plans, your kind of operational way that you work, is all about how to do things right, how to do things efficiently and how to get them right. Whereas strategy, on the other hand, is working out what are the right things to do. So in the absence of a strategic direction and a focus, which is basically what strategy is, it's all about focus, that means that you could be super efficient because your operations are working really, really well, but you could be doing the wrong things really well. So without a strategy, you might think, well, it's okay because operationally we are slick, we are efficient, we know what we're doing everything to a really high quality. That's great, but maybe you're putting your efforts into doing the wrong things to a really high quality. Strategy is all about deciding what you are and are not going to be focusing on as a school. So in the absence of that strategy, you don't have guidelines around what you are not going to do and what you are going to do, because you have an absence of that focus. And what I've seen working within, both when I was an employee, working as a senior leader within educational organisations and schools, and as a consultant coming in and helping people from the outside, I've seen three things happen. And these are three really good reasons why you need to have that strategy, that strategic direction and focus. So the first thing that happens is that good people get frustrated. When people are really good at their job, they either know and can actually articulate, we don't have a strategy, we need that vision of that strategic direction, or they just feel the absence of it. They may not use that language, but they get frustrated because they feel that they are working within an environment that doesn't have a coherent direction. Maybe they are being given contradictory signals and instructions around what's important. Maybe they're being given the signal that everything is important. And let's be honest, that's the route to burnout, because if everything is important and you're really good at your job, you're trying to do everything really, really well, and that is not going to be conducive to a really good mental health or work-life balance. So those really good people get frustrated. They are feeling the absence of direction, and they are feeling constrained by that. They know that they want to have a significant impact. They know that they can achieve that because they've done it before in other organisations, or because they just know that they're really good at their job. They have confidence about what they can achieve with their team. But day to day, they feel constrained because they don't have direction. They don't have an easy way of working out what to focus on. And therefore, it's really hard for them to say no. They're often doing way too much, too many activities, trying to do them super well, and finding actually that you sort of feel like you're going around in circles, basically, not able to make a really significant impact. Now, I've worked with people across multiple elements of what schools do, and it's exactly the same feeling. Whether people are working within curriculum development, within marketing, fundraising, whether they're boarding house parents, whatever it is, I have worked with them and they are feeling constrained and frustrated because they know they can do better, but they're feeling that they don't have the direction about where to focus because that strategy is missing. So that's the first thing that happens, is your good people get really frustrated. The second thing that happens is that often, not always, but often, if those good people are going to stay, basically they create their own strategic direction. They use a bit of guesswork, they use their own personal priorities, their own sense, gut instinct about what's important. And so they lead their team in a way that reduces that frustration, increases that sense of being able to do a select number of things super well, and therefore aiding that work-life balance. But the things that they're focusing on could well be quite different to the things that other leaders are focusing on in other teams. So what you end up with is a team could be managed really well with a really good kind of dedicated leader, but actually heading off in completely a different direction to everybody else. And that is because they are reacting to that frustration of that strategy void by creating their own strategic direction. Now, to some extent, maybe that's better than them just getting frustrated and then eventually leaving, but it's still not great. It still means that as a school, you're not working with coherence. You're all heading off in a slightly different direction. I did a podcast episode a little while ago where I talked about vision, and I talked about everyone climbing a different mountain because they're all heading in different directions. So if that feels like your school, do check out that other podcast episode as well. The third thing that happens, and I see this just as frequently, is people just default to carrying on doing the things that have always been done and doing them in the same way that they have always been done. There is a dampening, or maybe even a complete absence, of innovation and creativity, risk-taking, any sense of trial and error and strategic kind of trial and error. Basically, people are not empowered to try new things because there isn't a direction from the top. There isn't that strategic direction that makes them realise that maybe the status quo, doing the same things in the same ways we've always done them, isn't going to work anymore. Unless people are given an inspirational kind of visionary reason why they have to start changing what they're doing, a lot of people will just default to the comfortable status quo, and you lose any sense of innovation or creativity in your staff. And so for people who are satisfied with that, that's what they'll do. The good people will get frustrated in that kind of environment, and then they'll either do their own thing or leave. But everyone else will just carry on doing things because it's comfortable to be in that position. So those are the three things that I see happen. The first one, the really good people getting frustrated. The second, some of those good people solving that frustration by heading off in their own direction with their team. And everyone else just being very happy to carry on with the status quo. And the result is a culture in which you're not being innovative, you're not being creative. It's quite a stable environment, but actually, as we know these days, that it doesn't necessarily mean it's a safe environment, in the sense that organisations that stand still, it might feel comfortable, but actually the world is changing around you. And so in terms of securing your school's future, being comfortable is not always what you need. Sometimes you do need to be pushing people and assisting people to push themselves slightly beyond that comfort zone. So if any of that feels like your school, if you can see these things happening, maybe you can feel them yourself or within your team, it's a really good chance to just reflect, pause as we get to the end of this podcast episode and reflect, is this happening because we have a strategy void? That strategy void actually can exist even with a published strategic plan. So it might not be that the test is just, do we have a strategic plan or not, to tell you whether you have a strategy void. The real test is, are all of your staff, in fact all of your community, heading in the same direction, prioritising and focusing on the same things or the same themes at least, in order to move your school forward in one direction, up one of those mountains that I mentioned earlier in terms of your vision. Do check out the other episode around vision, because if you're missing the strategy, if you feel you're working in a strategy void, the first step to take is to try and create that vision. And so that previous podcast episode may help you to explain, using a bit more of a storytelling technique, to senior leaders about why this is happening, why we need a strategy. One of the things that I find fascinating is that there are two ways that I end up working with schools. One is that a head contacts me, often a new head, but not always. A head or maybe a chair of governors contacts me and asks me to help work with them to create a school strategic plan. The other thing that happens actually just as frequently is somebody else within the organisation, often a senior leader or a senior middle leader, if you like, will contact me to talk about some other support they might need around fundraising or coaching. And in actual fact, what they end up saying is, that's all great, but actually, can I get you to come in and work with my senior leadership team? Because if we had this strategy, a lot of the problems I'm facing would naturally be solved anyway. Fascinating. Look forward to talking to you again next time. Just reach out if I can help in any way if you feel you are working in a strategy void. And I'll talk to you again next time. Have a strategic week ahead of you. Bye then. Thanks for listening to the Independent School Podcast, the podcast that helps senior leaders in private schools to think and act more strategically, both because they want to secure the future of their school and because they want to help build a more equal and just world. You can listen in everywhere that podcasts are available. And if you want to catch up on previous episodes or follow any of the links that I've mentioned today, just head over to www.consultjuliet.co.uk/podcast.